So I would say there's probably two reasons that you're on the fence. One would be because you think you're going to be able to do it yourself. And if you think you can, you may as well give it a shot. Chances are you're either not going to do it, not be consistent, or the quality's not going to be there. And if you can do it yourself, then yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, there's no reason not to, I suppose. But then again, let's be honest, it can take several hours of work per week, and there is the stress that comes with it, and there's a lot of things that come with, you know, whatever business it is that you're running. So there's a lot of distraction. So it is very nice to be able to have something on autopilot. That's why you delegate work when you hire employees. And so there's no reason to be that much more stingy when it comes to working with a vendor versus when you're working with an employee, and then you're just like, yeah, that's fine, I'm already paying their salary, I may as well give them whatever you need to give them.
Abir, how are you doing, man?
Good. It's been a while. How you been doing?
Doing well. Lots of exciting updates. Moved into a new apartment, put my desk in the kitchen. So
love it.
For the viewers at home, nice. That's why we're here. So I'm excited to chat about the newsletter we've been collaborating on for, maybe 9 months at this point. It's been a while. Mm-hmm. And lots of issues. I've lost count. But let's start with some context for people watching this. You got your branded t-shirt on, which is nice. So that helps. But tell me a little bit about Upcounting. Yeah, I know you're super involved there. What's like the backstory? How did it come about? What do you do there, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. So Upcounting, in a nutshell, is an e-commerce focused accounting firm. It's essentially what you would expect out of an accounting firm in that we provide tax services, bookkeeping, and fractional CFO services specifically to e-commerce brands. Insofar as kind of like what I would say is our specialty, or what kind of makes us a little bit different. First and foremost, we focus specifically on e-commerce. So a lot of brands I know have had difficulty working with accountants who don't necessarily have a lot of familiarity with e-commerce. So given that our team is very well trained up on them, that's what we focus on. It's something where a lot of those issues are alleviated. On top of that, because of the fact that we also provide that fractional CFO level of support as well, having specific experience with e-commerce, and especially when you get to more sophisticated kind of levels of service like fractional CFO work, where you're doing forecasting, modeling, cash flow stuff, being able to have familiarity with that industry is a lot more valuable. On top of that, we also act very much like a startup or an e-commerce brand from a culture perspective, such that we do work very much on the same speed as brands are kind of used to. So all of our clients are on Slack. We do everything virtually. We have dynamic dashboards, not just like lame Excels and PDFs. We send, reporting through Loom and whatnot. So it's basically kind of just working with people that you're a lot more comfortable if you are an e-commerce brand yourself. That's kind of the way that you work. And so it's nice to be able to have your accountants and the people supporting you from that perspective work a very similar way rather than what most people are used to with traditional accountants, if you will. And myself in particular, I'm a CPA, I'm a co-founder of the company, so I do a lot of the fractional CFO work as well as training the team and just kind of admin, lead gen, hiring, all that fun stuff. But I used to run an e-commerce brand myself, and I also do quite a bit of media buying on the side too, even today. So it gives me a particularly unique kind of perspective insofar as when I do support brands with the fractional CFO side of things, because of the fact that I've been in their shoes. I've had the brand. I know ads very well, and ads, of course, being probably the number one lever insofar as kind of the success of what a brand can achieve. Spending a lot of time just in ad accounts every day also gives me a lot of perspective to kind of support some of the advice that I give on the CFO side. So I've also personally kind of put myself in a bit of a unique position such that the service that I provide is one that I think is fairly hard to compete with. And then on top of that, I try to train up my team for even the more generic kind of stuff, which is just bookkeeping and reporting. We've been able to build up kind of a level of competency that's very, very unique in the market, I'd say. Even our reporting is especially fondly thought of just because of the fact that it goes beyond anything that other brands can provide or other firms can provide, which mostly focus on kind of accounting data. We bring in a lot of data from the ad platforms, from Shopify, so that we have a much more robust kind of perspective on how the business is doing. So
yeah, I think that's awesome. It's not just that you have a lot of domain expertise from kind of your operational background, but seeing how that and communicating to the customers, how that translates into the cultural kind of working aspect, because that's a huge part of like making a vendor a part of your business rather than making an employee a part of your business. Is that, do they kind of plug into the vibes, if you will? Like, is it the same culture? Like we do everything on EOS, if you're familiar with like traction and that whole system. So like you work with another business that does that. It's like, oh, okay, that's like a whole thing that I don't have to explain. Like we speak the same language, and that just keeps it easy.
No, it's a great point. I mean, everybody's a lot more attentive to the importance of a culture fit when they hire a full-time employee, but it's oftentimes overlooked when you're looking for a vendor. There, you're just trying to be as mathematical about it as possible. And in our case, we try to cover both sides of it. We have better math than our competitors, and also we're a good culture fit for most of our clients. So it works out well. You're right.
Yeah, and I think that's hopefully something that a newsletter can help to accomplish, right? Is like communicating that you're not just, accountants who read the Shopify blog. It kind of starts to show your understandings of the culture and really subculture. And I hate saying the word culture without I don't know if I have the right vocabulary to make explicit the point I'm trying to get across, but the nuances of lingo and jargon and memes and those kind of things, referencing something that's, the opposite example is saying something clearly out of touch, avoiding doing things like that is just how you start to break past those walls with someone who's really looking for that and going to disqualify you on those grounds.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very much our team being on the same wavelength as the e-commerce brands that we work with. I was watching, actually yesterday, I was watching a Loom that one of our controllers sent over to a client to just kind of walk through their financial performance. And the fact that he was able to, and I was glad because I've been training them on this, so he's been picking it up quite well because he's relatively new. But it was nice to see, for example, him be able to break down the difference between the new customer revenue versus returning customer revenue, looking at NC ROAS versus blended ROAS, looking at gross margins and contribution margins. So identifying those metrics that a savvy business, e-commerce brand founder would care about and are things that are typically not within the lexicon of a normal accountant.
Exactly. So let's come back here to not the script, just a loose sense of bullet points that have to keep us roughly on track here. Why did you decide to work with Orbit Marketing? You're an OG. It was actually Inbox Ghost at the time, but for the folks watching, Orbit Marketing.
So a couple of reasons. I mean, on the one hand, I had been thinking about basically expanding on our content marketing efforts. I think that with accounting, it's one of those services that, unlike, for example, if I'm providing you with media buying, there I can try to knock on your door and just tell you hey, if you hire me right now, I'll make you more money, and if you don't, you'll lose money. With accounting, I think it's one of those things where obviously if it doesn't make money in and of itself, it's very much a function of people being able to use the data in a way that helps them make better strategic decisions. So on the one hand, that doesn't necessarily mean that we can make money for everybody independent, because ultimately it comes down to how they actually use the information we provide them. But at the same time, it also means that it has to be something that the brand is willing to invest in from their end, and so far as finding the right timing to actually be able to make good strategic decisions with that data. So from that perspective, or given that perspective, I realized that there's a fair bit of lead gen that I can do through Google Ads and stuff, but going out and just knocking on people's doors, cold email, cold calling, even Facebook ads would be a little bit tougher because of the fact that you have to find people in the right moment. So for me, content marketing was kind of how I first started, testing out those waters. Started off with things like Twitter and YouTube and whatnot, and we saw very good traction. So email was a platform that I wanted to be able to use for a long time, but I never really had an opportunity to get into. I have a little bit more experience with the content marketing side when it comes to social media, but with email it was still a little bit foreign to me, at least from the perspective of an operator. I'm obviously on a lot of newsletters, so I read quite a bit. But to me, it was an opportunity to basically maintain a lengthier sort of, relationship with people and just have multiple touch points over a long period of time where I'm not necessarily trying to convert them right now. And I'm not really worried that if I knock on their door today and they're not ready to convert, then I just lose out on them forever. It basically gives me an opportunity to just stay top of mind for them over a longer period of time, so that when the moment comes that either they need an accountant or it comes up in conversation with somebody else and they need to be able to kind of refer somebody, they're able to kind of refer back to us. So obviously that exists already with social media, but the benefit of email, aside from owning your own audience and what have you, is that it was also an opportunity to kind of build a very specific strategy for the content on that platform. So whereas on something like Twitter, I'll engage in a lot of conversations, I'll leave tips here and there. What I wanted to be able to provide on the email newsletter side was a little bit of a different approach from a content perspective, and something where I felt there was a little bit of a gap, I suppose, which was to focus on providing information to e-commerce brand founders that aren't going to come from the vast majority of newsletters out there that do target them, which are probably 98% focused on marketing. I'm on a ton of those newsletters myself, but the vast majority, I guess marketers are good at marketing. So a lot of the newsletters that exist for e-commerce brand founders are all around ads, marketing, social, influencers, stuff like that. And rightfully so to a good extent, because obviously that is a very significant lever for them. But there isn't necessarily a lot of opportunity to talk about the things that are everything but marketing. So whether that be hiring, fundraising, accounting and finance stuff, operations, shipping, whatever it is, all those aspects, I never really found a place where that was kind of being discussed. Yet founders will obviously recognize that as being an extremely important part of the business. I mean, the marketing is just one, very important, but just one aspect of it. So to me, given the fact that I saw that there was what I perceive to be a gap insofar as kind of the content diet for founders, as well as an opportunity to kind of just maintain a good relationship with them, and kind of what you alluded to earlier, also have that opportunity to kind of show that we get what matters to brands from everything we understand the marketing side, but everything else as well, all the operational stuff that's important, is something that also is very much top of mind for us, and we think should be for the founders as well. So it just kind of felt like a good fit, I guess.
No, that's awesome. I think, I'm forgetting the exact phrasing for it, but kind of just repeated exposure and familiarity slowly builds trust. It's so nice when you kind of escape kind of the scarcity part of business, where like every person you meet, like everywhere you go, you're like, oh, could this person become a customer? I need a customer. Right. When's my next sale? And it's like, oh, they're wearing a t-shirt, and you're like, well, t-shirts, they must know e-commerce. Maybe they can bring me a customer. Versus just being like a bit more slow, just like more of like a normal person who's just like, hey, I do this cool thing. It's relevant for you. And then letting that kind of just be a more natural process where they, oh, this is brought to you by this company with like a gentle CTA at the bottom. That's like, by the way, we do this when you're ready. And then you've also now created an opportunity when you do have like a specific, maybe there's a seasonal or kind of unique promotion. It's a natural opportunity to make those offers without it just being like, hey, you've never met me before. By the way, we have the sale right now. We'll do this custom lead magnet, or this free report, or this free audit. Like, where's this coming from? So
yeah, exactly. It's just that opportunity to maintain those touch points with content that's actually interesting to them. Like, I often liken it to, this might be not the best analogy, but I like it. Real estate agents who, for example, decide to make every single post that they put on social media, for example, just a house that they're selling. And it's like, most people are going to buy a house like, I don't know, once every 10 years on average. So it's for, 9 out of those years, a follower doesn't really care about your content at all until that they're actually ready to buy. And so anybody who's able to kind of just maintain content that's relevant and interesting to you, or maintain touch points that are relevant to you during those other 9 years, those are the people that are probably going to follow you. You'll get a little bit more attention. So when the time comes, they're going to think of you. And that's why it was important to think of like, what are the things that matter to founders? What's all this other content? And yeah, sure, I could have done a marketing newsletter, but at the same time, I also have to consider the fact that there's like 100 of them out there. So something that I felt like there just wasn't enough conversation around.
Yeah, our goal with yours and a lot of other clients is to make something that's properly interesting, regardless of if they have bought from you, if they have no intention to buy from you. It's something that for your ideal customer, they would read theoretically, as long as they're still your ideal customer. And whether or not they purchase is not like a factor, because a lot of people with your CRM, for example, like your kind of alternative is someone expresses some level of interest. So then what do? You just like send them a DM once a week. Hey man, still interested? Hey man, still interested? Hey, just checked in and still interested? Like, hey, been a while, still interested? And like, that's all you got. That's all you got. Versus like, here's something valuable, here's something valuable. And if they're interested, all you're accomplishing when you say still interested is just like you said, that reminder that you exist. Now it's like reminding them that they exist. Again, and you're also not going to just, on a sales call, you don't create a strong enough relationship with someone where like you would just start to send them like, hey, I found this interesting article about supply chain related to ecom brands, wanted to send it to you. It's like with a lot of interactions, you just didn't quite get there with someone where they'd be like, okay, but this kind of creates that appropriate environment where like it's right place, right time to do those things, and you're still achieving the same outcome.
Yep. And hopefully if they're finding that content valuable, then they are also developing that association in their minds with you being somebody who is providing valuable advice to them over time. So it gives you that opportunity to kind of very on a trickling basis, kind of develop that relationship slowly. Exactly.
What would you say has been your favorite part about working with us?
I'd say, there's a handful of things. Probably my favorite is that like the amount of kind of changes or edits or revisions or anything necessary to the newsletters on a weekly basis are basically nothing. Like I think the first couple of issues we worked through kind of the style, updating sort of like what sort of content we want to focus on, making some adjustments to just formatting and what have you. But once we kind of nailed that down, which was also very, very quick to nail down, then the rhythm kind of kicked in very quickly. And then every once in a while when I'd have an idea about something like, oh, maybe we could do this a little bit better, have a little section dedicated to this, or like show a little quote, whatever it was, that was pretty much implemented right away, usually done correctly on the first iteration. So very smooth. Insofar as kind of like the communication, we're all in Slack, so it's nice. So as I find interesting articles that I think like these are the things that we should include in the newsletter this week, I just send them over. The responsiveness is extremely quick. They're always incorporated really well, and like the main point of it is also well kind of highlighted. So it seems like your team they get the point of the article. So it's not like I have to go in and kind of summarize it for them or explain why the article matters. I can just share the article and they get it, which is also fantastic. And then insofar as kind of even the editing process, it's very smooth. They just kind of send me the link. I just go in there, I scroll through it. At most, every once in a while, like every maybe second newsletter or something, I might change a takeaway to kind of emphasize another point a little bit more, because I think like this was a particularly interesting, takeaway point from that article or whatever it is. But even that takes me a few minutes. So, I mean, really, it's just the efficiency, because the main reason that I didn't get started for so long is just I don't have time. But this is, I mean, the trade-off in terms of like what it cost me and how much time I'm saving, it's incredible. So pretty much everything.
I appreciate that. I think it's a big all or nothing fallacy that, I try not to, on sales calls, be the guy who's like, yeah, we could do that. Like, because that kind of sounds like, well, if you can do everything, you can do everything. But we do truly operate on a flexible gradient. So for example, on a week where you don't find anything on your own, it's not like we don't write the newsletter because you didn't send us anything.
Right.
But if you do happen to find something, okay, great. That's one less thing we have to do, one thing we know you're going to like, and one thing that's like especially good fit for the audience because you've kind of put that second level on it. And same thing, like some people, again, the amount of effort it would take to fully do the whole thing versus the amount of marginal effort to just proofread something once or twice a week, because you do operate in a super specialized domain, right? We're not CPAs writing it. The team that's been on your project has learned a ton about the industry from reading the archive when they were onboarded, and then having kind of myself and whoever initially started the project as kind of that reviewer who's gradually stepping away. But like you said, the gradient there of trade-offs from like, okay, my options aren't just I'm stuck doing this on my own, or I have to give it to someone, and if they don't get it perfect, then it's catastrophic because then I look silly in front of my readers. It's like there's that middle ground, which is like, no, I take 4 minutes on average on a weekly basis to make those subtle tweaks because I am in a highly specialized space.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also nice, like you noted, because of the fact that I don't necessarily feel a significant amount of pressure that I need to make sure that I find the right articles. Because certainly in addition to all just the general management of the platform and the writing of everything and all that, like that would in of itself be a significant amount of work. But there would also be that stress that comes with the fact that like, I was really busy this week. I don't know I didn't have time to gather some articles to be able to kind of put it in the newsletter. And so then there's a very good chance I'll end up skipping a week. And the problem is once you skip one, then you just kind of like, then there's no reason not to skip any week you want. So you kind of break that discipline. So from that perspective, it's very nice that like, if I do find things that I think generally make sense and I have the time to be able to kind of search and curate things, I send them along, they're incorporated. And if not, I don't need to worry about things. So the stress levels are extremely low because of that, which is, what more can you ask for?
Yeah. It's one of those things that kind of try to politely, but still somewhat smugly, like comes up like in a sales conversation when someone's like, well, why couldn't I just like do this on my own with ChatGPT? It's like, well, you could have this whole time, but like you haven't been. And like, it's like and then if you think about it, it's like, well, you could make a draft, but then you're going to have to edit it. And then it's going to kind of give you the same thing every week. So how you're going to create new stuff. And then it's like, so go try that. Tell me how many you published and tell me how many were good. And then come back to me. It's like, I don't want to be too smug about it, but it's like I hear it so often. I'm like, well, I could just do this with ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Then I'm just like, okay, well, you go do that and report back to me and tell me how it was.
Yeah. I mean, even after seeing the way it all works, like it would never cross my mind or it'd be worth it for me to go and say like, oh, let me just go figure this out. Like the amount of savings I would have would be minuscule, and the amount of time I would waste and the stress that it would come with is just not worth it at all. Like it works well. And at the end of the day, I think anybody who's trying to run a business that wants to grow, they get the value of spending money to make money. So it's always going to work out in my favor this way.
Yeah. I like that. Very accounting oriented analysis of the situation. What would you say what would you say to someone who's on the fence about starting a newsletter or working with Orbit Marketing?
So I suppose you kind of touched upon it yourself, is that if you're on the fence because of so I would say there's probably two reasons that you're on the fence. One would be because you think you're going to be able to do it yourself. And if you think you can, you may as well give it a shot. Chances are you're either not going to do it, not be consistent, or the quality's not going to be there. And if you can do it yourself, then yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, there's no reason not to, I suppose. But then again, let's be honest, it can take several hours of work per week, and there is the stress that comes with it, and there's a lot of things that come with, whatever business it is that you're running. So there's a lot of distraction. So it is very nice to be able to have something on autopilot. That's why you delegate work when you hire employees. And so there's no reason to be that much more stingy when it comes to working with a vendor versus when you're working with an employee, and then you're just like, yeah, that's fine, I'm already paying their salary, I may as well give them whatever you need to give them. So on the one hand, there's that kind of aspect of it. The second part of it is you might hesitate just because of the fact that you don't know that you're actually going to get value from it. I think that there might be merit to that argument insofar as you may not have the right audience, you may not have the right offer, and you may not know how to build your list either. So there are some aspects that we might not get the value, but insofar as being able to get good quality writing that's on par or like per the instructions that you provide for a good cost, like that value you're definitely going to get.
I like it. Let's give a shout out. So the newsletter, if people want to read the newsletter, where can they sign up? Likewise, if they need accounting services, what's the best place to find you and your business on the internet?
Sure. So the newsletter is ROAS Ain't Cash Flow. So they can just Google that, I suppose, I hope, and be able to find the newsletter there. I think it's roasaintcashflow.com, if I recall correctly, unless it has like a Beehive sign up as well. But nevertheless, one of those should work.
I will say adding the word Beehive does make it rank really high. When you say, when you're looking for newsletter on Beehive, ROAS and Cashflow Beehive, if you spell it wrong, but you add Beehive, you'll probably find it.
That's a good point. Yeah. So there, it'll be very difficult not to find it, I suppose. So you can go there to kind of sign up for the newsletter. And if you want to work with us, I mean, you can either come through the newsletter or you can go directly to our website, which is Upcounting, like the word up and counting, upcounting.com.
Amazing. Abir, I appreciate it, man.
Of course. It's my pleasure. Thanks for you taking the time as well.